Macao, also spelled Macau, officially the Macao Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China, is an autonomous territory on the western side of the Pearl River Delta, China. Macao is also bordered by the city of Zhuhai in mainland China to the north and the Pearl River Estuary to the east and south. Hong Kong lies about 64 kilometers to its east across the delta, with an estimated population of around 652,500 living in an area of 30.5 square kilometers. It is the most densely populated region in the world. Macao was administered by the Portuguese Empire and its inherited states from the mid-16th century until late 1999, when it was the last remaining European colony in Asia. Portuguese traders first settled in Macao in the 1550s. In 1557, Macao was rented to Portugal from Ming China as a trading port. The Portuguese Empire administered the city under Chinese authority and sovereignty until 1887, when Macao, through a mutual agreement between the two countries, became a colony. Sovereignty over Macao was transferred to China on the 20th of December 1999. The Joint Declaration on the Question of Macao and Macao Basic Law stipulate that Macao operate with a high degree of autonomy until at least 2049, 50 years after the transfer, under the policy of one country, two systems. The State Council of the People's Republic of China is responsible for military defense and foreign affairs, while Macao maintains its own legal system, public security force, monetary system, customs policy, and immigration policy. Macao participates in international organizations and events that do not require members to possess national sovereignty. Macao is among the world's richest regions, and as of 2015 its GDP per capita by purchasing power parity is higher than that of any country in the world, according to the World Bank. It became the world's largest gambling center in 2006, with the economy heavily dependent on gambling and tourism, as well as manufacturing. According to the World Fact Book, Macao has the fourth highest life expectancy in the world. Moreover, it is one of only a few regions in Asia with a very high Human Development Index, ranking 18th in the world as of 2014. Etymology. Macao is otherwise known in Chinese as Haojing or Jinghai. The name Macao is thought to be derived from the Amar Temple, a temple built in 1448 dedicated to Mizu, the goddess of seafarers and fishermen. It is said that when the Portuguese sailors landed at the coast just outside the temple and asked the name of the place, the natives replied. The Portuguese then named the peninsula Macao. The present Chinese name means inlet gates. History. The history of Macao is traced back to the Qin dynasty, when the region now called Macao came under the jurisdiction of Panyi County, Nanhai Prefecture. The first recorded Chinese inhabitants of the area were people seeking refuge in Macao from invading Mongols during the Southern Song. Under the Ming dynasty, fishermen migrated to Macao from Guangdong and Fujian. The Macao native people were tanker boat people. Macao did not develop as a major settlement until the Portuguese arrived in the 16th century. In 1513, George Alvarez became the first Portuguese to land in China. In 1535, Portuguese traders obtained the rights to anchor ships in Macao's harbors and to carry out trading activities, though not the right to stay on shore. Around 1552 to 1553, they obtained temporary permission to erect storage sheds on shore. In order to dry out goods drenched by sea water, they soon built rudimentary stone houses around the area now called Nam Van. In 1557, the Portuguese established a permanent settlement in Macau, paying an annual rent of 500 taels of silver. The Portuguese continued to pay an annual tribute up to 1863 in order to stay in Macau. By 1564, Portugal commanded Western trade with India, Japan, and China, but the Pride was shocked by the indifference with which the Chinese treated them. The Senate of Macau once complained to the Viceroy of Goa of the contempt with which the Chinese authorities treated them, confessing however that it was owing more to the Portuguese themselves than to the Chinese. In 1631 the Chinese restricted Portuguese commerce in China to the port of Macau. During the 17th century, some 5,000 slaves lived in Macau, in addition to 2,000 Portuguese and 20,000 Chinese. As more Portuguese settled in Macau to engage in trade, they made demands for self-administration, but this was not achieved until the 1840s. In 1576, Pope Gregory XIII established the Roman Catholic Diocese of Macau. In 1583, the Portuguese in Macau were permitted to form a senate to handle various issues concerning the social and economic affairs under strict supervision of the Chinese authority, but there was no transfer of sovereignty. Macau prospered as a port, but it was the target of repeated failed attempts by the Dutch to conquer it in the 17th century. On June 24, 1622, the Dutch attacked Macau in the Battle of Macau, in the hope of turning it into a Dutch possession. The Portuguese repulsed their attack and the Dutch never tried to conquer Macau again. The majority of the defenders were African slaves, with only a few Portuguese soldiers and priests. Captain Cornelis Reyes Erwan was commander of the 800-strong Dutch invasion force. The Dutch governor Jan Pz. Cohen said after the defeat that the slaves of the Portuguese at Macau served them so well and faithfully, that it was they who defeated and drove away our people the last year, and our people saw very few Portuguese during the battle. Following the First Opium War, Portugal occupied Taipa and Cologne in 1851 and 1864 respectively. On the 1st of December 1887, the King and Portuguese governments signed the Sino-Portuguese Treaty of Peking, under which China ceded the right of perpetual occupation and government of Macau by Portugal, in compliance with the statements of the Protocol of Lisbon. In return, Macau government would cooperate with Hong Kong's smuggle of Indian opium, and China would be able to increase profits through customs taxes. Portugal was also obliged never to alienate Macau without previous agreement with China, therefore ensuring that negotiation between Portugal and France or with other countries would not go forward, so that the British commercial interests would be secured. Macau officially became a territory under Portuguese administration. In 1928, after the Qing dynasty had been overthrown following the Zhuhai Revolution, the Kuomintang government officially notified Portugal that it was abrogating the Treaty of Amity and Commerce. The two powers signed a new Sino-Portuguese Friendship and Trade Treaty in place of the abrogated treaty, making only a few provisions concerning tariff principles and matters relating to business affairs. The new treaty did not alter the sovereignty of Macau, and Portuguese government of Macau remained unchanged. During World War II, unlike Portuguese Timor, which was occupied by the Japanese in 1942 along with Dutch Timor, the Japanese respected Portuguese neutrality in Macau, but only up to a point. As such, Macau enjoyed a brief period of economic prosperity as the only neutral port in South China after the Japanese had occupied Guangzhou and Hong Kong. In August 1943, Japanese troops seized the British steamer Shan in Macau and killed about 20 guards. The next month they demanded the installation of Japanese advisors under the alternative of military occupation. The result was that a virtual Japanese protectorate was created over Macau, when it was discovered that neutral Macau was planning to sell aviation fuel to Japan. Aircraft from the US Enterprise bombed and strafed the hangar of the Naval Aviation Center on 16 January 1945 to destroy the fuel. American air raids on targets in Macau were also made on 25 February and 11 June 1945. Following Portuguese government protests, in 1950 the United States paid $20,255,952 to the government of Portugal. Between the end of the Pacific War and the establishment of the People's Republic of China, Macau served as a safe haven for refugees of the Chinese Civil War. After the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the Beijing government declared the Sino-Portuguese Treaty invalid as an unequal treaty imposed by foreigners on China. However, Beijing was not ready to settle the treaty question, leaving the maintenance of the status quo until a more appropriate time. Influenced by the Cultural Revolution in mainland China and by general dissatisfaction with Portuguese government, riots broke out in Macau in 1966. In the most serious, the so-called 12-3 incident, 6 people were killed and more than 200 people were injured. On 28 January 1967, the Portuguese government issued a formal apology by means of an admission of guilt. Shortly after Portugal's 1974 Carnation Revolution, which overthrew the Estado Novo dictatorship, the new government determined it would relinquish all its overseas possessions. In 1976, Lisbon redefined Macau as a Chinese territory under Portuguese administration and granted it a large measure of administrative, financial, and economic autonomy. 3 years later, Portugal and China agreed to regard Macau as a Chinese territory under Portuguese administration. The Chinese and Portuguese governments commenced negotiations on the question of Macau in June 1986. The two signed a Sino-Portuguese joint declaration the next year, making Macau a special administrative region of China. The Chinese government assumed formal sovereignty over Macau on 20 December 1999. The economy since then has continued to prosper with the sustained growth of tourism from mainland China and the construction of new casinos. Government and politics. The Sino-Portuguese Joint Declaration and Macau Basic Law, Macau's constitution, promulgated by China's National People's Congress in 1993, specify that Macau's social and economic system, lifestyle, rights, and freedoms are to remain unchanged for at least 50 years after the transfer of sovereignty to China in 1999. Under the principle of one country, two systems, Macau enjoys a high degree of autonomy in all areas except defense and foreign affairs. Macau officials, rather than PRC officials, run Macau through the exercise of separate executive, legislative, and judicial powers, as well as the right to final adjudication. Macau maintains its own currency, customs, territory, immigration and border controls and police force. Executive. The government in Macau is headed by the chief executive of Macau, who is appointed by the central government upon the recommendation of an election committee, whose 300 members are nominated by corporate and community bodies. The recommendation is made by an election within the committee. The chief executive's cabinet is made up of 5 policy secretaries and is advised by the Executive Council of Macau, which has between 7 and 11 members. Edmund Ho, a community leader and former banker, was the first chief executive of the Macau SAR, replacing General Vasco Rocha Vieira at midnight on 20 December 1999. Fernando Chui is the current chief executive. The chief executive and the cabinet have their offices in the Macau government headquarters, located in the area of São Lourenço. Legislature. The legislative organ of the territory is the Legislative Assembly, a 33-member body comprising 14 directly elected members, 12 indirectly elected members representing functional constituencies, and 7 members appointed by the chief executive. Any permanent residents at or over 18 years of age are eligible to vote in direct elections. Indirect election is limited to organizations registered as corporate voters and a 300-member election committee drawn from broad regional groupings, municipal organizations, and central government bodies. In February 2009, the Legislative Assembly passed the Macau National Security Law based on a withdrawn security legislation previously introduced in Hong Kong. Democracy advocates feared that the bill's excessively broad scope could lead to abuses, a concern which has been heightened after a number of prominent supporters of democracy in Hong Kong were denied entry into Macau in the run-up to the bill's passage. Judiciary. The original framework of the legal system, based largely on the law of Portugal, the Portuguese civil law system, was preserved after 1999. The territory has its own independent judicial system with a high court. Judges are selected by a committee and appointed by the chief executive. Foreign judges may serve on the courts. Macau has a 3-tier court system: the Court of the First Instance, the Court of the Second Instance, and the Court of Final Appeal. Military. Under Portuguese rule, Macau often served as an expeditionary base to Japan and other regions of East Asia from the 16th century onwards, while maintaining a strong garrison mainly to repel Dutch and mainland Chinese attacks. However, since the Allied British settled Hong Kong, the need for a strong military presence in Macau dimmed and it became limited before ceasing in 1974. However, despite having no Portuguese garrison left on the territory, a small security force managed by the local PSP was kept, which proved useful with the escalating triad warfare tensions towards the last decades of Portuguese administration. Also, the Capitania dos Portos kept operating a coast guard and the Portuguese Air Force kept airfields active until the opening of Macau International Airport in the mid-1990s. In 1999, upon handover to the PRC, a substantial garrison of the People's Liberation Army was established in the city, helping deliver the last blow to the violence perpetrated by the triads, who were weakened by police action and arrests prior to the handover. The garrison remains, with a large portion of the forces stationed in neighboring Zhuhai as well. Geography. Macau is situated 60 kilometers southwest of Hong Kong and 145 kilometers from Guangzhou of mainland China. It also has 41 kilometers of coastline, yet only 310 meters of land border with Guangdong of mainland China. It consists of the Macau Peninsula itself and the islands of Taipa and Cologne, which are now connected by landfill forming Cotai. The peninsula is formed by the Zhuhai Estuary on the east and the Shijiang on the west. It borders the Zhuhai Special Economic Zone in mainland China. The main border crossing between Macau and China is known as the Porte de Cerco on the Macau side, and the Gongbei Port of Entry on the Zhuhai side. Macau Peninsula was originally an island, but a connecting sandbar gradually turned into a narrow isthmus, thus changing Macau into a peninsula. Land reclamation in the 17th century transformed Macau into a peninsula with generally flat terrain. The numerous steep hills still mark the original landmass. Alto de Cologne is the highest point in Macau, with an altitude of 170.6 meters. With a dense urban environment, Macau has no arable land, pastures, forest, or woodland. Climate. Macau has a humid subtropical climate, with average relative humidity between 75% and 90%. Similar to much of South China, seasonal climate is greatly influenced by the monsoons, and differences in temperature and humidity between summer and winter are noticeable, though not as great as in mainland China. The average annual temperature of Macau is 22.7 degrees Celsius. July is the warmest month, the average temperature being 28.9 degrees Celsius. The coolest month is January, with a mean temperature of 14.5 degrees Celsius. Located on China's southern coast, Macau has ample rainfall, with average annual precipitation being 2,120 millimeters. However, winter is mostly dry due to the influence of the vast Siberian high affecting much of East Asia. Autumn in Macau, from October to November, is sunny and still pleasantly warm with lower humidity. Winter is generally mild with temperatures above 13 degrees Celsius most of the time, although it can drop below 8 degrees Celsius at times. Humidity starts to increase from late March. Summer is very warm to hot during the day. The hot weather is often followed by heavy rain, thunderstorms and occasional typhoons. Economy. Macau's economy is based largely on tourism. Other chief economic activities in Macau are export-geared textile and garment manufacturing, banking and other financial services. The clothing industry has provided about 3/4 of export earnings, and the gaming, tourism and hospitality industry is estimated to contribute more than 50% of Macau's GDP and 70% of Macau government revenue. Macau is a founding member of the WTO and has maintained sound economic and trade relations with more than 120 countries and regions, with European Union and Portuguese-speaking countries in particular. Macau is also a member of the IMF. The World Bank classifies Macau as a high-income economy, and the GDP per capita of the region in 2006 was $28,436. After the handover in 1999, there has been a rapid rise in the number of mainland visitors due to China's easing of travel restrictions, together with the liberalization of Macau's gaming industry in 2001 that induces significant investment inflows. The average growth rate of the economy between 2001 and 2006 was approximately 13.1% annually. In a World Tourism Organization report of international tourism for 2006, Macau ranked 21st in the number of tourists and 24th in terms of tourism receipts. From 9.1 million visitors in 2000, arrivals to Macau has grown to 18.7 million visitors in 2005 and 22 million visitors in 2006, with over 50% of the arrivals coming from mainland China and another 30% from Hong Kong. Starting in 1962, the gambling industry had been operated under a government-issued monopoly license by Stanley Ho Sociedad de Turismo y Diversos de Macau. The monopoly ended in 2002 and several casino owners from Las Vegas attempted to enter the market. With the opening of the Sands Macau in 2004 and Wynn Macau in 2006, gambling revenues from Macau's casinos were greatly prosperous. In 2007, Venetian Macau, at the time the second largest building in the world by floor space, opened its doors to the public, followed by MGM at Macau. Numerous other hotel casinos, including Galaxy Cotai Mega Resort, opened in 2011, and plans for a $3.9 billion complex that will be known as Lisboa Palace is expected to be completed by 2017. In February 2015, the gambling revenue in Macau fell by 48.6% from a year earlier at 19.5 billion patakars, the biggest monthly decline that has ever been recorded. Reasons for this fall of revenue are related to the slowdown that the Chinese economy is having and a corruption crackdown by Chinese officials, which has constrained lavish spending. In 2002, the Macau government ended the monopoly system and 6 casino operating concessions and sub-concessions are granted to Sociedad Turismo y Diversos de Macau, Wynn Resorts, Las Vegas Sands, Galaxy Entertainment Group, the partnership of MGM Mirage and Pantyhose, and the partnership of Melco and Publishing and Broadcasting Limited. Today, there are 16 casinos operated by the SDDM, and they are still crucial in the casino industry in Macau. But in 2004, the opening of the Sands Macau ushered in the new era. Gambling revenue has made Macau the world's top casino market, surpassing Las Vegas. The amount of performances performed in Macau has also shown an increasing trend since the early 2010s, including the show House of Dancing Water, concerts, industry trade shows and international art crossovers. Macau is an offshore financial center, a tax haven, and a free port with no foreign exchange control regimes. The Monetary Authority of Macau regulates offshore finance, while the Macau Trade and Investment Promotion Institute provides services for investment in Macau. In 2007, Moody's Investors Service upgraded Macau's foreign and local currency government issuer ratings to AA3 from A1, citing its government's solid finances as a large net creditor. The rating agency also upgraded Macau's foreign currency bank deposit ceiling to AA3 from A1, as prescribed by the Macau Basic Law. The government follows the principle of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenues in drawing up its budget, and strives to achieve a fiscal balance, avoid deficits and keep the budget commensurate with the growth rate of its gross domestic product. All financial revenue of the Macao Special Administrative Region shall be managed and controlled by the region itself and shall not be handed over to the Central People's Government. The Central People's Government shall not levy any taxes in the Macao Special Administrative Region. Monetary system. In Macau, the unit of currency is the patakar, which is currently pegged to the Hong Kong dollar at a rate of $1 equals 1 Macanese patakar and 3 avos. The name patakar is a Portuguese word which was applied to the Mexican dollars that were the main circulating coin in the wider region in the second half of the 19th century. In 1894, the patakar was introduced in both Macau and Portuguese Timor as a unit of account for the Mexican dollar and the other silver dollar coins in circulation. However, the patakar was not the official currency when it was first enacted. In 1901, it was decided to grant the Banco Nacional Ultramarino the exclusive rights to issue banknotes denominated in patakars, and in the year 1906, all foreign coins were outlawed. However, the Chinese were suspicious of these paper patakars, being so accustomed to using silver for barter, and as such, the paper patakars circulated at a discount in relation to the silver dollar coins. In 1935, when China and Hong Kong abandoned the silver standard, the Hong Kong dollar was pegged to sterling at the fixed rate of 1 shilling and 3 pence, whereas the patakar was pegged to the Portuguese escudo at a sterling equivalent rate of only 1 shilling. From 1945 to 1951, fractional coins of the patakar were minted for issue in Portuguese Timor, and in 1952, similar issues were minted for Macau, including an actual patakar coin for the first time.